Today we're going to go through chapters 4 through 6 of the Three Body Problem, continuing our book club videos. So, did I say 3 through 6? 4 through 6? I hope I said 4 through 6 because we have done 3, as you all know. And 4 is where the first, I don't know, as far as I know, the only big time jump happens, but it is a significant one. So, chapter 4 begins 40 plus years later from where we left off with, what was her name? With Yi and Yang at Radar Peak. We jump in with somebody completely different, whose name is Wang Miao. And Wang Miao is some kind of a researcher in the field of nanotechnology. We begin the chapter with him being confronted by two police officers as well as a few army officers. He's like, what the hell's going on here? The police officer's coming in. He's like trying to smoke cigarettes in his house. He's like, I would appreciate it if you didn't do that. The police officer identifies himself as a man named Shi Qiang. And she asks him, Professor Wang, we want to know if you've had any recent contacts with the members of the Frontiers of Science. And they are some kind of a group who is trying to look into the limits of science in the natural world. Like, where does science become ineffectual with understanding the natural world? And right away, Wang is kind of like, it's not a crime to know people from this place. And the officer is very confrontational, shall we say, with Wang. Just being like, oh yeah, why are you talking like that? Of course it's not a crime. Did we say it's a crime? We never said that. Wang really does not react well to this man. The detective is pulled out by another officer who is basically like reprimanding him. But while that's going on, another officer comes up to Wang and says, hey, like, don't misunderstand. You're actually being invited to this really important meeting. You're getting an invitation from a general. It's this afternoon, like a car's being sent to pick you up. And Wang's basically like, I can't, I'm busy. And the dude is like, yeah, about that, it can't happen without you. It's really important that you're there. If you can't make it, we might not as well have the meeting at all. We also find out through a secondhand conversation as Wang's listening in to this major talk to this army officer. And they're like, dude, what the hell's wrong with that detective guy? And they start kind of talking about these rumors that have been surrounding Shi Qiang, that he is... Well, that he screwed up some kind of a hostage situation and the hostages died due to his recklessness, that he is somehow has ties with organized crime and has in the past gotten one gang to fight another gang, and also that he's currently suspended because he tortured a confession out of some accused person and disabled him permanently disabled him via torture. Yeah, I guess that gets you a suspension in China. They're asking, how can a man like that be part of Battle Command Center? The first time we ever hear this phrase. And Wang is kind of like, are they meaning for me to overhear this, or what's going on with that? But he's kind of intrigued and kind of wondering if they're manipulating him at the same time. But next thing we know, car's sent. Wang gets in. He gets over to some kind of a compound that's within this suburban area. He figures it's actually some kind of a military installation. He gets into this room. It's kind of informal, but it's obviously filled with very important military people, including people from NATO and the CIA, not Chinese people. And he also sees his best friend Xiqiang. And he actually like greets Wang on the way in there and kind of tries to like chum it up with him. After Wang sits down, like she kind of like moves over to him and he's talking to him like, hey, like, you know, don't let these guys manipulate you. They just want information from us, but they're not going to tell you what this is all about. Like, I've been here for a month. I don't know anything about what these people are doing. And he's clearly kind of irritated at this whole proceedings. But the General Chang starts the meeting, and they're talking about some kind of a war that has multiple fronts that are going on. Let me rewind this a little bit. She talks to Wang about his nanotechnology research, which apparently is in nanomaterials, and it's something where they can like make material so fine and so strong that like if you build it up it could support like a truck, so it's very durable. He asks if you could like commit a crime with it. If people got a hold of it, could they make it into a knife? And like he says, I hear they can slice a car in half with one stroke. And Wang's just like, there wouldn't actually be a need for that. What you would do is you'd make a string of it, like a fraction of a hair's width. If you pulled that across a street and a car ran into it, it would slice it in half like cheese. And once again, he kind of feels like he's being pulled in by Shi to like incriminate him in some way, because he's asking him like, why you could create, or you could like do a crime with anything, like you could do a crime with frozen tilapia if you needed to, and like, why are you asking me about this anyway? And she's just like, oh yeah, no, this doesn't have anything to do with what we're here for. During this meeting, you know, Shi keeps on making these interruptions, and the general refers to him as Da Shi, and apparently that means, it's like a nickname, it means Big Shi. And I guess he served under the general, and that the general requested him specifically to be involved with these proceedings, to be involved with whatever Battle Command Center is. But we've already learned that Shi doesn't actually know what it's about either. He doesn't know why he's being used, and it seems to really irritate him. So as they are talking about some kind of war that's going on, they're saying that this is a life and death situation, and they also pass around this list, this document. At the very end of it, Wang just kind of like freezes. He sees this name and he freezes, and she notices this, and he's just like, you know that person? You know that person, that last person on the list? And he doesn't say anything. He's like, oh, you don't know her, but you want to know her, right? And kind of right then, Wang Miao is like, all right, I understand why the general picked this dude. Like, he may not be a good person, but he is like incredibly observant, has a good intuition, and he's probably like a fearsome cop, is what he refers to him as. And then we have this like flashback of Wang being in this construction site in Yangshan, and he is working on this nanotechnology project. They're building up this some kind of a particle collider, but it's essentially part of a nanotechnology research center. And as he's working out on this site, he sees this young woman come out, and it's also been established that he is a landscape photographer by hobby, and often when he's looking around, he kind of sees things as a composition. And as he sees this lady come out, he's just kind of like struck by something about her, and he starts thinking that like these compositions that he makes in his mind, that he actually like takes pictures of, like he gets this feeling that they're missing something. And then he kind of has this realization that like, she's what they're missing. Like she's like the soul of like what I'm trying to capture somehow. Which I initially took as some kind of romantic thing. We'll see a little bit later whether that's true or not. But it turns out that this lady is somebody named Yang Dong, which Dong apparently is more of a man's name, so while she's well known, most people believe that she's a man. And he's like, wait, Young Dong's a woman? And I guess that would be similar to if, we had some physicist who never takes any interviews or anything. You get onto the job and you realize that Jeff Smith is actually a woman, you know? Like, wait, Jeff is a woman? Yes, Jeff is a woman. And so Yang Dong, that sounds familiar, right? We met Chief Yang, who took in Yi. So if you read the beginning, they kind of have this like list of like significant characters, and she is described as the daughter of them. So she apparently has got into physics too, and is continuing some kind of work maybe from them. That's my thought. That's not what it says, but I'm trying to like connect some dots here. They're kind of speculating about like what her deal is, like why she never does any TV interviews or anything like that. But he doesn't seem to have ever actually met her, at least not in that little reverie. But we get back into the room where they're having this these proceedings about some kind of war that's going on, just in time for General Chang to tell us this list, every physicist on it committed suicide over the past 2 months. And Wong's just like floored, right? Like, what the hell's even going on? He even asked them to like, wait, when did this happen? And the general just like, 2 months ago. Like, I just said this. And she looks at him. He's just like, you're talking about that last name, aren't you? And they keep on describing she as having this like smirk, this trademark smirk, right? Like, every time he like says these little quips like that, he intuitively knows that he's like struck some kind of a chord, he does this smirk. They end up asking somebody named Ding Yi, who is a doctor who is working on something called Ball Lightning, which apparently is from another book called Ball Lightning that Cixin Liu also writes. I have not read that book. I didn't actually know that they were connected in any way, so now I feel like I'm kind of missing out on something that I should know about. Like, we have no background on Ding. All we know is that he studied some kind of macro atom that had to do with ball lightning. So anyway, apparently he was Yang Dong's boyfriend, according to Shi, and who of course like has great satisfaction telling Wong this. But these suicide notes, they all tend to be like these long essays, except for hers, who the general asks Ding to read hers. And it's just a single line, and it's written on a piece of birch bark. It says, all the evidence points to a single conclusion. Physics has never existed and will never exist. I know what I'm doing is irresponsible, but I have no choice. No signature. That's her suicide note. And Wong's sitting there like, physics doesn't exist. He has no idea what to think about it. General Chang closes that folder. They start talking about how there's all this specific information in experimental results, and that all the people who have committed suicide are in some way connected to the frontiers of science. They are apparently attempting some new way of thinking. They're trying to, like I said before, use methods of science to determine what the boundaries of science are in the natural world. And there's no evidence of any drug use or psychological manipulation techniques or any cult-like phenomenon going on that would possibly put somebody into a suicidal state of mind. It's like they have no idea why these prominent thinkers are committing suicide, but they all seem to be connected to this organization. And they've brought in Professor Wong because he has some kind of connection with them, And indeed, he admits he knows somebody named Shen Yufei, who was also studying nanotechnology. She's some kind of physicist. Through her, he knows a couple of other people that were in the frontiers of science. They were talking to him about some of their theories, and he was like, whoa, that's like some radical stuff. It's kind of interesting, but he more has like the applied stuff, similar to how Yang was talking before. They asked him to join. He did decline because he said, like, I don't really have enough time. I don't have enough energy to pursue something like this. So the general actually says, Professor Wang, we actually need you to accept that invitation. We need you to go join them. We need you to give information that you're getting from the inside to us. And he's basically like, you want me to spy on them? And they're like, you're our only in. We don't have too many people in these circles. We don't have a way in outside of you so much. So like, yes, we're asking you to do this. Just pass along what you learn to us. And he's just like, nah, like, I'm not a spy. I'm not gonna spy. I'm not really comfortable with that. And finally, there's a little back and forth, and the general's like, all right, well, sorry we wasted your time. I guess you can go. And of course, our friend Shi cuts in, basically like yelling that, it's better this way. These like bookworms already killing themselves. If we sent this dude in, like, he's freaking dead for sure. Like, he called him, he'd be a meat dumpling thrown to the dogs. And Wang just is getting fed up with it, really. Kind of challenges Shi a little bit. He's just like, these people, they meant something. Like, the work that they did, their minds, that's a loss to society. And then she's just like, what, are you saying that they're better than me? And they have this like argument, and Shi really works him up. The general is like, Dashi, like, shut the hell up. And Wang's just like, no, like, it's cool. Like, you know what? I changed my mind. Like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to take that invitation, and I'm going to prove, like, to this a-hole that he's crazy. I'm going to go in just to do it, to prove this fool wrong. And Dashi is just, like, now giving him, like, a wolf smile, full on, like, oh, yeah, like, well, stay alert, be safe, like, make sure to get emails, web addresses, and computer screens from him. He got him in. She got this dude in. Once again, you're kind of looking at him like, huh, like, I guess there's a really good reason that the general got him in on this, because he has a really good feel for people, and you can tell that he knows what buttons to press in order to get certain results. So afterwards, the general has like a brief conversation with Wang, and gets him a car to pick him up and bring him home. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, like, I was Ding's driver, so, like, I wasn't the one who took you here. I took Ding here, but I'm going to take you home. And he's like, actually, take me to Ding's house. And we get into chapter 5, which Wang gets to Ding Yi's house, and they actually play a game of pool together. Wang gets there, and Ding is drunk. His girlfriend's committed suicide, but then you learn a little bit, too, about how Yang Dong was kind of cold in a way, not in like a cruel or a heartless or like a I don't actually like you Ding way. Well, he describes it, she was like a star, always so distant. Even the light she shone on me was always cold. So you just get this idea that she was brilliant, but she wasn't 100% emotionally available, I suppose. Ding's telling him, like, hey, like, your first instinct was right. Like, don't get involved with the police or the military. They all have it wrong anyway. These people killing themselves, like, it has nothing to do with frontiers of science. And he's tried to explain it to them, but they don't get it. Wang's trying to get him to understand. He's like, you know what, like, why don't you explain it to me? So as they're playing this game of pool, he goes like, can you pocket the 8-ball from like this distance, right? And he puts the 8-ball, he puts the cue ball like pretty close to it. There's like a direct line into the pocket. He's just like, yeah, I can make that. And he's just like, are you sure? Just like, yeah, go ahead, knock it in. He goes, knocks it in, and then he goes, all right, well, let's move it again. And it's like different pocket, same distance, and he has him knock it in, and he keeps on doing it. And Wong's kind of like flabbergasted as to why, like what he's trying to prove with this. And he goes like, this is an experiment. Let's analyze the results. We ran the same experiment 5 times. 4 of the experiments differed in location and time. 2 of the experiments were at the same location but different times because they went all the way around the table, right? So aren't you shocked by the results? 5 times every colliding experiment yielded the exact same result. And Wong's just like, what are you saying? He's like, can you explain it? Use the language of physics. All right. During these 5 experiments, the mass of the 2 balls never changed. In terms of their location, as long as we're using the frame of reference of the table, there was also no change. The velocity of the white ball striking the black ball also remained basically the same throughout. Thus, the transfer of momentum between the 2 balls didn't change. Therefore, in all 5 experiments, the result was the black ball being driven into the pocket. Ding continues to drink and goes, all right, let's celebrate. We've discovered a great principle of nature. The laws of physics are invariant across space and time. All the physical laws of human history, from Archimedes' principle to string theory, all scientific discoveries, intellectual fruits of our species are the byproducts of this great law. Compared to us 2 theoreticians, Einstein and Hawking are just applied engineers. And he's clearly joking, but he's trying to get the point across that like this is how basic physics works. Wong's basically like, I still don't really get it because like I'm in nanotech, I work with micro scale structures, but that's magnitudes orders larger than the scale that you're doing your work. So like you tell me the laws aren't invariant across time and space. You get down far enough and weird stuff happens, right? I think everybody listening to this, like if you've heard anything about quantum physics, that's often the thing that's said, like we have Newtonian physics, theory of relativity, but like if you go down small enough, like those laws are broken. The things that happen in quantum space are not the things that happen larger scale, right? And he's saying like even in the nanotechnology scale, that's even way too big of a scale for quantum things to be happening. Physics also doesn't exist. Because these laws aren't invariant, meaning just because it works here at this scale, it doesn't mean that it happens there. We can't rely on it completely. So to accomplish something in theoretical physics requires one to have almost religious faith, and it's easy to be led to the abyss. So this would shake a theoretical physicist to their core. But I think it's a little bit deeper than that, because I think it's not just what they're finding in the particle colliders. I mean, unless he's being like very dramatic with what he's talking about, because I mean, people work on quantum physics all the time. They're not all committing suicide, so like why are these people, right? There's more to it than that. We just don't know exactly what it is yet. And before Wong goes, Ding tells him, visit Yangdong's mother. They lived together. She was her entire world. If you she's all alone now, but before he leaves, Wong asks him, you clearly know more about this than I do. Can you tell me more? Do you really believe that the laws of physics are not invariant across time and space? And Ding says, I don't know anything. But that is the question. And that actually completes something that a British colonel had been saying at the meeting, to be or not to be. But he didn't finish it. Ding just finished it. That is the question. Chapter 6 is called The Shooter. Jesus. Chapter 6 is called The Shooter and the Farmer. So chapter 6 begins with Ding. The next day, it's the weekend. He's going out to do some photography, and he likes to do black and white, analog camera, and he describes his style as being more classical and like calm, and he's having a hard time getting into the headspace. He was having dreams about the billiard balls and like weird physics anomalies happening with them, and it's just like he's thinking about this conversation that he had with Ding the night before, and he has this point where he's thinking, can the fundamental nature of matter really be lawlessness? Can the stability and order of the world be but a temporary dynamic equilibrium achieved in a corner of the universe, a short-lived eddy in a chaotic current? And without realizing it, he starts thinking about how the Frontiers of Science members used to talk to him about physics, and they had used this abbreviation SF. And normally we think of that as like science fiction, but when they used it, they were actually referring to something else called the shooter farmer. That was actually this hypothesis, two different hypotheses about the fundamental nature of laws of the universe. And so in the shooter hypothesis, this marksman shoots at a target, and he's a really good marksman, and he hits it. He hits a hole in the target every 10 centimeters, like clockwork, just super precise, and he does it every 10 centimeters. Now, you suppose that there's this on the surface, it's inhabited by these intelligent two-dimensional creatures. Their scientists, after observing their universe, discover this great law. There exists a hole in the universe every 10 centimeters. And they have this mistaken result based on the marksman's momentary whim of an unalterable law of the universe. That's all they know. That's all they see. But the farmer hypothesis is a little bit different, but it gets a very similar thing across. And that is that every morning on a turkey farm, a farmer comes to feed the turkeys. One of the turkeys is a scientist, and he's observed this pattern, and it holds without a change for almost a year. Every morning at 11, food arrives. Now, on the morning of Thanksgiving, the scientist announces this law to the other turkeys, but that morning at 11, food doesn't arrive. Instead, the farmer comes and kills the entire flock. Oof. So we're getting some pretty crazy, dare I say, foreshadowing. If we have these superior beings in the universe, did they help create our understanding of physics somehow? And if they did, is it by some whim that our physics exists, or is it by design to somehow fatten us up for the kill? So Wong continues on his day. He goes through this roll of film, and he develops it at his house, and he starts seeing some odd things. As he's looking at his different shots, he's seeing these like line of tiny white marks, and it turns out to be numbers. Not only are they numbers, they're numbers specifically separated by colon. We'd associate that with time. Not only that, they seem to be counting down. The further in time he's shooting subsequent shots, the timer has elapsed some. Obviously, this is freaking him out a little bit, and he disassembles his camera to see if somehow somebody bugged it or put in some kind of technology that would cause that strange thing to be in the exposure. He notices that the countdown began with 1200 hours, and now they were at 1194 hours, just under 50 days. He's wondering, is it now that it's at 54 days, or that's just the moment I took the last photograph? Is the countdown proceeding? So he starts to conduct his own little experiment. He gives an extra camera to his wife. Yes, Wong has a wife and a son. And anyway, he gets them to shoot a bunch of pictures, and he shoots some more as well. But none of the ones that he develops or checks the digital viewfinder for that they shot come up with any of these numbers, but his continues to count down. And he's slightly relieved that it's not happening to them, but now his wife especially is like freaking out, like, yo, Wong, is like everything okay, man? Like, you're freaking me out, you're scaring me, what the hell's going on? Now he gets desperate. I need to figure out what this countdown's about. I need to figure out what's going on. He figures the Frontiers of Science might have the answer to that, because this might be a part of why everybody's been committing suicide, right? So he calls up Yufei, his friend Shen Yufei, says, Dr. Shen, I have a problem. I must see you. She says, come over, and hangs up. Like, doesn't ask what it's about. he realizes she probably knows something about this. Like, she was expecting his call. She has a husband, Wei Cheng, and he was always working on something, this powerful HP workstation, and it was a research center grade one, so it was like crazy powerful for a home device, which he thought was a little bit strange. But Wei answers the door. He sees Shen seated in front of a computer playing a game, wearing a V-suit. So like in this world, I'm kind of imagining it as like this Ready Player One, like virtual reality suit, so that it has like haptic feedback for a virtual reality world, so that you can feel what your virtual self is feeling to some extent. He says it can actually provide the experience of being struck by a fist, stabbed by a knife, burned by a flame. It generates extreme heat and cold, so you can feel all those things, which is kind of scary, right? I wonder how they got that done. And he sees at on her computer there's a URL, www.3body.net. She takes off her helmet, gets out of the suit, puts on her glasses, and they have this conversation. She's asking about his nanomaterial project, and he's just like, what does that have anything to do with this? And she just looks at him and is like, stop your research. And he's just like, wait, what? What are you talking about? This is a key national project. I can't just stop it. Just stop it. Try to stop it. He's like, well, what do you know? Like, tell me what you're talking about. She goes, I've told you all I can. The more he tries to ask her, she just keeps on telling him, just stop, try it. Frontiers of Science isn't a discussion group about fundamental theory. It's got some deeper connection that's more complicated. She goes, no, it's the opposite. Your impression is due to the fact that the frontiers of science concerns matters far more fundamental than you imagine. So it's not that it's complicated, it's just that it's fundamental. He sees like a car drive up, and he notices that the man is one he recognizes, somebody named Pan Han. And he gets out, and he was some kind of biologist who had really important work with birth defects associated with genetically modified foods. And he was very accurate at predicting different kinds of catastrophes. He comes and he knocks on the door. He asks Shen, is he in? Referring to her husband. And he says, I have to warn him, and I also warn you, do not force our hand. Just cold. He leaves. And so Wong's hearing all this like, what the hell have I gotten myself into, right? When he leaves, it's after midnight, and he actually sees Jiang. And she's just like, hey, yo, how you been the last couple days? Wong's just like, are you following me? But she is just being his normal, like, smart-ass self, and he's asking him if he found any useful information when he went to go see Shen. She's just like, hey, like, I'm not getting paid to keep track of you, you know, like, I'm doing this out of more or less the kindness of my own heart. Like, I missed a soccer match to come check in on you. And Wong's just like, yeah, screw off. So he gets back home. He gets down a couple of sleeping pills so that he can actually get to sleep, but he sees the countdown in his sleep. And it becomes more and more obvious till he can't get it out of his head. And when he wakes up, he's hoping that, like, oh man, bad dream, right? Like, I've been through a lot lately, but he actually sees the countdown continuing in his vision, like while he's waking. Every time he looks at something dark, it turns bright. Every time he looks at something bright, it turns dark, right? He looks at the sun and it's like black on the sun. And now he's really tripping out. He goes to the eye doctor. Then the doctor is just like, you're seeing numbers. He's like, yes. And it's like a countdown. And he's like, right in the middle of my visual field. And the doctor's like, okay, this is psychological. You know, like, if you get some rest, if you take a break from what you're doing, the numbers will clear up. You'll stop seeing them. And he's just like, you're sure? And he's just like, oh yeah. Like, it's like, this is all in my head. He's like, yep. Okay, gets this feeling that he's wasting his time there. He goes into his nanotechnology research center. He's asking about like a breakdown of what's going on. The guy's like, oh yeah, there's like some issues. They'd best be fixed if we shut this down for a moment. And he's already thinking like, he's not gonna let us shut it down, like this freaking dude. And then Wong's like, yeah, shut it down, and better, like, everybody take a break too. And he's just like, really? Okay, yeah, let's shut this down then. He's just like, yeah, no, shut it down now. And he's just like, now? Okay, like, let's do it, right? He shuts it down. As it shuts down, the countdown stops. He picks up the phone, he dials Shen Yufei. She picks up immediately, and he asks her who or what is behind this, trying to make his voice calm but failing, and there's silence on the other end. He asks, what will happen at the end of the countdown? Silence. Are you listening? Yufei says yes, and he's trying to ask her, why this project? Why does this matter to you? She says, whether something is worth the attention is not for us to decide, meaning like she's not making the rules here, but also confirming that the frontiers of science in one way or another are behind the numbers showing up in Wong's vision. He's basically like terrified, angry, this desperation's rising up in him. He's just like, you think these cheap tricks can fool me? You know, like, you can't stop technological progress? I don't know how you're doing it. I admit I can't explain it right now. I know you're using some kind of illusion. She says, you're saying you want to see this at a greater scale? The question is whether you can take it. We're friends. I want to help you avoid Yongdong's fate. So it's like, oh dang, like even deeper, right? Like she knows that they're the cause of these suicides, and she's like, I don't want you to commit suicide. Like, I'm your homie. Like, I want you to survive this. Like, you should just do what we say. Do you have a computer connected to the internet? Gives him this web address. You know, it's pretty complicated, so I'm not going to repeat it here. Buy the book if you want to see it. During the next 2 days, find a place where you can observe the cosmic microwave background. For specifics, please check the email I'll send you. And he goes, what are you going to do? I know your nanomaterial project has stopped. Do you plan on restarting it? Of course. 3 days from now, he says. Then the countdown will continue. He asks, what scale will I see it? She says, 3 days from now, between 1 and 5 in the morning, the entire universe will flicker for you. And that's how it ends. That's chapter 6. So I guess she's gonna make the entire universe flicker. What does that mean? Are they gonna, because he's talking about putting the countdown back up. She says in 3 days the countdown will continue. So when that continues, I'm gonna make the universe flicker for you, right? Like, we're gonna make that universe flicker. So is the countdown going to be on the cosmic microwave background, like the Big Bang, essentially? We don't know. We don't know, but some crazy stuff is going to happen. Going back to what I think about some of this, Shen talked about whether something is for their attention or not is not for her to decide. So either she has a boss, but she made it seem like none of them could decide from the frontiers of science. So I think it's pretty obvious, knowing what this book is about, that we just went into X-Files territory, my friends. Like, frontiers of science is some way, shape, or form working for the aliens and forwarding their agenda, and they don't know why they're doing what they do. Also, it seems pretty clear to me that Big Shi, who is following around Wong to some extent, or at least has a good idea of where he will be, is actually looking out for him, but in the way that he knows that he's going to be the key to unlocking what this whole thing is about. And I think he knows more than he lets on. Like he said, they didn't tell me anything about what's going on, referring to that like military meeting. He's clearly doing a bunch of stuff on his own. He's like, they didn't pay me to tell you, you know, I'm doing that myself. So I think that he has tailed other scientists in the past and has figured out a lot about what's going on with this frontiers of science, and he knows that something big is behind it. Whether he knows that aliens are involved, you know, I have no idea. But he knows some stuff and he's trying to get to the bottom of it. So I think he's going to be a big asset going forward. And he seems to understand that he is on Wong's side, even though he knows he pisses him off, and Wong doesn't understand that he's on his side yet. Like, he's not trying to incriminate Wong. He's trying to have his back, honestly. And it might be for selfish ulterior reasons. Like, he's his only in just as much as he is the only in for the military. But I think that he wants to get to the bottom of what's going on. And I guess we'll see if he does. So go read the next chapters. I think we're going to do like 7 through 13 next. We're going to start doing it in 6-chapter increments. We'll see how the next chunk goes. But let me know what you guys think. Join the Discord. Leave some comments if you don't feel like joining the Discord, but you still want to talk about this book, this freaking wild book. Go ahead and leave me a couple comments. I'll be interested to hear what any of you guys have theories about. Please, no spoilers on anything past chapter 6. Don't talk about what happens in chapter 7. Even if it has something to do with what's going on in chapter 6, most likely does. We don't want to hear any of that here because people are going to be coming in to hear only about up to chapter 6, and especially for a book like this, like, oh my god, I'm sure it could be spoiled like 7 Ways to Sunday. So like, don't do it, for the love of God. All right, anyway, you guys have a great rest of the week, and I will see you next week. Sorry for this late video. The next one's coming on Tuesday again. I make threads every single Sunday to hop in on. We got a couple new members of the book club, so yay. Welcome in Neilani and Hildy. Very glad to have you guys in. If anybody else wants to join the book club, come on in. There's plenty of room, and I'll see you next week.